Write inequalities to represent the following unshaded regions R. So here we have 6 different regions. They're all drawn on a graph, and we're interested in the unshaded bit. So that means if you look at just A, you've got this bit shaded out here and this bit shaded out, and you can see the bit that's actually labelled R is the unshaded bit, the white bit. So that we need to try and find some inequalities to describe the rules for this region. We're going to do the same for all 6. One thing you may notice is you can see you've got kind of on the boundary lines, there could be a solid line, as in A and B are solid lines, and so are D and F. But if you look at C and E, on the boundary of the regions here, you've got a dashed line, so it does mean a different thing. It means a different type of inequality. And E as well, dashed line. So you need to know that if it's a solid line like that, then the actual on the line is part of the region. So that means it could be something like this or something like this, which is exactly the same rule as, if you can remember, when we did inequalities on a number line. So it's when you have the filled in circle like that, included. If you have a dashed line, it's exactly the opposite, excluded. So that would be greater than or less than, and it would be equivalent to the hollow circle for the inequalities on a number line. Okay, so now we know that. Let's start with part A. We want to know a set of rules where we can be in this region. So if you look at it, I'm outside of the region here, and my x value is positive. Once we get to the line and beyond, we're in the region. So once we get to the y-axis, which is the line x equals 0, then we're in the region. But if we go down a bit, we have a problem with y as well. So actually, not only does the x value need to be either 0 or less than 0, but the y value needs to be 0 or greater than 0. So we need 2 inequalities to describe part A. So for part A, you're going to have, well, x needs to be less than or equal to 0. I know it's less than or equal to because it's a solid line. And y needs to be greater than or equal to 0. Okay, part B. Part B, here you've got the region we want here. This is the unwanted bit that's been shaded. So it's different to part A. It's only really a horizontal line that's making the boundary. There's not 2 lines making the boundary here. Don't worry about the x-axis, that doesn't change anything. It's this line y equals 4 that seems to be the boundary line. It's a solid line, so the line is part of the region. So basically, whenever the y value is 4 or less than 4, you're in the region. So that means y needs to be less than or equal to 4. Part C, you've got a boundary line here is a dashed line, so that means on the line is not part of the region. The unwanted bit is below -1. Again, it's a horizontal line, so it's going to be y equals something, or y equals -1. And then to be above that, or to be in the region, you need to be greater than -1, but it can't be -1. So for part C, y needs to be greater than -1. Okay, part D. Here you've got a vertical line. It's a solid line, so the line itself does form part of the wanted region. The wanted region R is to the left of this line. That line is x equals 2. So as long as x is less than or equal to 2, you are in the region. Part D, x is less than or equal to 2. Part E, it's very similar. You've got this line x equals -1. It's a dashed line, so on the line is not part of the region. So you need to be on the right side of the line to be in the region. So that means x needs to be greater than -1. X is greater than -1. And finally, f. Here you've got two unwanted regions shaded out. So it's going to be a bit more, a couple more rules to describe it. But you've got two lines, you've got y equals 3 and you've got the x-axis. They seem to be boundary lines of the region. They are solid lines, so being on the line is fine. They class as being in the region, so you're going to be on the less than or equal to or greater than or equal to. So basically, to be in this area, y needs to be less than 3 and it needs to be greater than 0. But it could be 3 or it could be 0. So this one, you need to be between 0 and 3. It could be 3, could be 0, and we're talking about y.